Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Walking Through the Scriptures with Joseph Pahota. I got another good one for you today, and this is not an exposure video or a rebuke. This is something I found is very interesting. And if Paul Washer, if you have a way of getting a hold of me, or if this video ever finds you, because clearly I don't have Paul Washer's email and I don't have his cell number, I would love to call him on this to one, show his side of the story to see if this story is true. But then two, if it is true, I would just look, Paul Washer, if you're watching, I would love to talk to you, sir, because I'm wondering, are you wrestling with your denominational beliefs? And if so, I would love to talk to you because come on over, come on in the water. The water is fine. come to the dark side, if you will. Okay. It's okay if you're wrestling with your denominational beliefs and you now don't agree with them anymore. And you may be wrestling with this, and this may be a problem for you because you've kind of grown through the ranks, particularly in the G3 ministry circle, because when they have a G3 ministries conference and whatnot, you're one of the speakers they invite and whatnot. So if you decide that they're now wrong, this may affect your status and influence within that circle. Well, let me tell you, sir, I used to be prosperity gospel. I used to be word of faith. And you're right. When you come up against your hierarchy, if you will, the hierarchy will kick you to the curb. And boy, did they ever do me that way. So you are going to have to pay a price. There's no getting around that. You will. But I would like to be a voice to you to say, look, man, the price is worth it. There is a price to be paid, but the price is worth it. And come on over, brother, because I'd love to have this conversation with you. Because I've walked away from my denomination. I walked away from my hierarchy, if you will, and that's helped me get to where I am now. So everybody's got their own journey, and your journey may be different than what your denomination's been teaching you. So there's a guy here. Now, I'm not promoting his channel. I don't know anything about him. So please don't email me and say, well, he's a heretic and he's a bad guy, whatever. I don't know anything about this guy. Okay, but he said he went to a Paul Washer conference. And Paul Washer said some very interesting things at that conference. So I'm just going to go play the video, and I'm going to do some commentating as we're going along here. And because I just found this very, very, very interesting. So this guy here, he says his name is Dyer. Again, I don't know anything about him, but he says he got kicked out of a meeting that Paul Washer was having, but Paul Washer did see him after the meeting, and he said something very interesting. So I'm just going to go ahead and play it.
Paul Washer would tout the beloved theological fathers like Augustine and Calvin and the Protestant heroes. And by the time of about 2004 or 5, this completely shifts to where Paul has realized, I'm not joking, because I bought him books about the church fathers and would give them to him back in the day, where he has realized that in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th century, they're teaching Orthodox Catholic things.
Mm-hmm.
So he realizes this. By 2004, 5, 6, Paul becomes an Anabaptist, like literal Anabaptist, precisely to say that the church went into blackout. That's his words. So the last time that I spoke to him, when he had this open debate challenge.
Now, he said Paul went Anabaptist. I don't know about that, but he does say that Paul believes the Anabaptists were right. Now, just for real quick, for history's sake, there's a really good book out there called The Reformers and Their Children. It's basically, you can get that book on Amazon, and I read it. It's a really good book, and it's basically talking about how the Reformers persecuted the Anabaptist. Okay. And they persecuted him really, really badly, actually. And now, granted, the book was written by an Anabaptist scholar, but it's very, very good. And it talks about how the Anabaptists were persecuted, but they were persecuted by the Reformers. And you're going to find there were some things that the Anabaptists did that the Anabaptists were right. And it was the Reformers who were wrong. Well, Paul Washer is going to conclude that as well. He's going to say here in this video that Paul Washer admits, yeah, the Anabaptists got it right. And the church was in blackout. Well, does that mean the Reformers and the Reformed Church as well? Because if so, then, so basically the question that this guy's going to ask Paul Washer is, You know, you quote Augustine and you quote all these preachers, and whatnot, and Athanasius and all these people that the Reformed community and the G3 community and everybody within your circle, or a lot of people in your circle, I'm not going to say everybody, but G3 ministries and Reformed camp quote, and they love and they admire and they're so great. But now you're admitting that they've been wrong on some things. So the question now is, how do you balance that? And where do you now run with that? And where do you now go with that when your heroes of the faith turned out to be wrong? What do you now do with that? And I'll be honest with you, that is a question I have for not only Paul Washer, but I have that same question for like John MacArthur and Vodi Bakum. And, you know, I can't ask him now, but when the R.C. Sproul was here before he died, I would have loved to have asked these guys and everybody in G3 Ministries. You know, you quote John Calvin and you quote, you know, John and you quote Martin Luther and you quote all these reformers. Well, they got a lot of things wrong. And so much, in fact, like Martin Luther was, you know, his racism against the Jews and all that, like he would be unqualified for ministry today. I'll go even further. In some of these reform circles, like G3 Ministries or whatever, they would consider these people today to be false teachers. So how do you balance that with, they're supposedly your heroes of the faith, but by your own doctrinal requirements, by your own resume that you and your ministries are putting out, if you hold your standards to what they did, you would say they're heretics or they're false because they're not living according to the doctrine that they put out. Yeah, they got great sound doctrine, but they're not living according to their doctrine. Therefore, they're castaways according to the Apostle Paul, and therefore not fit for ministry. And yet, these are your heroes. So how do you wrestle that besides, well, they had great sound doctrine, but they weren't living it? Well, we would call that today a castaway and therefore not fit for ministry. And therefore they shouldn't be a person we should submit to. But you got a whole entire denomination submitted to their teaching. So what say you? Now, I'm not saying they got everything wrong because, again, the doctrinally, they got a lot of things right. But I think that is a fair question to ask. Where do you draw the line between, oh, we should be following them, but at the same time, they were heretics, or at the very least, they were castaways, and therefore they weren't fit for ministry. And if they were alive today, we would say you're not fit to be in this church because you're racist or whatever, or you were just wrong, like John Calvin when he had, I think it was Felix Cervantes basically murdered. Now, granted, I understand it was the culture of the day and they killed heretics and all that back then, but we all can agree they were wrong for doing it. So when you have people who were wrong, what say you now when it comes to what you believe and what you're doing now? I think this is a fair question. I think that, now, in fairness, I would have the same question to all these Pentecostal charismatics. You know, your hero in the faith, turns out they were wrong in a whole bunch of stuff. First of all, for them, I would say, hey, do you know how wrong they are? Because in a lot of these Pentecostal charismatic camps, they're not even told about the sins and how wrong and how blatantly in error their teaching was, but they're somehow, heralded as, a hero in the faith. And it turns out they were a hot mess, fraud, and a whack. They're a total quack job, but they're not told that. But once they find out the truth, do you still see this person as a hero when you know the truth about him for real? See, I would have the same question to the Pentecostal charismatic camp too. In fairness, I would give them the same question. So this is a good question that Jay Dyer is asking. I have the same exact question for Paul Washer and the G3 Ministries and everybody else. And again, I would use the same thing for the Pentecostal charismatic camp too. I would ask them the same thing. What happens when your heroes aren't really heroes? How does that affect your theology? And what does that say about your denomination, who got their whole entire theology off their beliefs? And it turns out that hero wasn't all that heroish. That's a fair question.
I went to a local Baptist church where he was speaking, and I went in and waited until after. I didn't disrupt the service. I wasn't rude. Waited till after he, finished his talk, and then opened it up to the debate to whoever wanted to challenge him. And I said, hey, I'd like to talk to you because you always open this up. I know you. You say you bill it as a come public speak challenge thing. I said, I want to talk to you about the early church. I want to talk to you about the first 3 centuries. I want to talk to you about how they taught things that you think are heretical. And I want to know why you still claim Athanasius and Augustine as your spiritual heroes and forebears when you also appear to now be saying that they were heterodox. They didn't have the gospel and they're lost.
Big question. Man, that is such a good question. That is a fair question, and it's a great question. Let me go ahead and rewind. There's nothing sneaky or scandalous, or there's nothing wrong with that question. That is a good question, saints. That is a really, really, really good question. And I can also give that same question to the Pentecostal charismatic leaders too. But that is I'm sorry, that is a really, really, really good question. I'm going to rewind it in case you missed it.
Church, I want to talk to you about the first 3 centuries. I want to talk to you about how they taught things that you think are heretical. And I want to know why you still claim Athanasius and Augustine as your spiritual heroes and forebears when you also appear to now be saying that they were heterodox. They didn't have the gospel and they're lost.
I would like to hear Paul Washer say that. I have not heard that. If you know that he has said that, please put it in the comments to confirm that's what Paul Washer said. If he has said that, boy, that's a great question. So please, if you know of that where Paul Washer said that, please put that in the comments, because I would love to know that, because I personally not heard Paul Washer say that about Augustine and Athanasius or what have you. But if you have, please put that in the comments. But then too, boy, that's a great question. Basically, what he's saying here is, how do you balance that? You're considering these heroes of the heroes of your faith, but at the same time, now you're saying that they were lost. Well, then by default, how can they be heroes if they're lost? Great question. Great question.
And he got furious, dude. He literally said, I want that man escorted out. I want that man escorted out. And so I was so mad.
By the way, if you ever heard Paul Washer preach when he gets emotional and he starts crying a little bit, that impression was pretty much spot on. In fairness, that was a great impersonation of Paul Washer, just saying.
Mad that he got these big redneck deacons to escort me out of the church. I waited in the parking lot for him. I was so mad, right? So I waited out there, and the deacon dudes are like standing in the doorway, like they thought I was going to come back in, like, because I debated. I'm like this, terror figure. So like, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? Right. So all I did was wait outside, and eventually Paul came out. I waited probably an hour, right? So Paul comes out. I said, I want to talk to you. And I don't appreciate that you have me thrown out of the church for asking you the question. When you build it as anybody can come challenge you about your doctrines.
And I would agree with that. If that's how this was billed, then again, I would like to hear Paul Washer's side of this to find out if this story is true. Because again, I don't know. I wasn't there. I have no idea. However, if this story is true, and if this was billed as a question and answer session, and again, it was a very good question. There's nothing wrong in and of itself of that question. I think it's a very fair question, and I actually think it's a great question. But if this was billed as a Q&A session, and since this was a great question, if this is indeed what happened, yes, Paul Washer was wrong for kicking him out. There was nothing evil or malintent. Now, granted, could his words been used for malintent or for evil purposes? I guess. But in and of itself, there was nothing wrong with that question. That's a great question that he asked. And if this was indeed billed as a Q&A, then quite frankly, yeah, he was wrong to be getting kicked out. There was nothing malicious about that question. And if you're billing this as a Q&A session and you get the question, Paul, man up and answer it. So again, if this is true, I would like to know his side, Paul Washer's side, just to verify this story. Because again, I don't know I have no way of verifying it because I wasn't there. But if this is true, yeah, you were wrong for kicking him out. And 2, that was a great question, Paul. There was nothing wrong about it.
And he said, Jay, I'm happy to talk to you. We can talk, brother. But when we talk, we're going to sit down and talk as men and not in front of a crowd. I'm like, dude, you bill it as that. What are you talking?
Exactly. If you bill it as that, then that's what you got to do it. And if not, then don't bill it like that and talk to him one-on-one like you're doing in the parking lot. Then do that, but don't bill it like you're going to do it, and then you don't do it, because now it's false advertising.
Talking about. And I was mad. I was like, dude, you had me strong-armed by 2 big bubbas to throw me out of the church. Literally, they like grabbed me, pulled me out. I wasn't fighting them because obviously I can't take 2 big redneck dudes. But I was mad. I'm like, dude, you gonna throw me out of the church? This is crazy. So afterwards, we're out there in the parking lot, and he's totally changed he's all soft and nice now. So in person, though, escort that man out of the church. I'll never forget it because he's up there on the stage. Brothers, can you escort that man out of here? Like he's some kind of like God or something, like decreeing this from Olympus. I'm like, dude, give me a break. So he escorts me out. We're out in the parking lot, and now he's on.
Well, that's a little bit too far of an analogy, but I get your point. I mean, if this is a Q&A session, he was wrong for kicking you out. I agree.
Oh, nice, right? Well, the problem, brother, was that you didn't approach me in the manner of Christ. You didn't approach me in the manner of a servant. And like, is this a real person? Just talk.
A manner of a servant. What are you talking about? Again, if this is a Q&A session, then he's allowed to ask you a question. Could it be that you're walking in pride because you feel that, you got smacked a little bit and you didn't want to get embarrassed in front of the crowd? And if so, Paul, again, I don't know your side of the story, but if that's the case, Paul, then this is on you. What do you mean the manner of a servant? See, that seems, if this story is true, that seems condescending. A manner of a servant. Well, Paul, you're supposed to be a servant too. We're both supposed to be servants. So what do you mean the manner of a servant? That sounds like I'm supposed to be subservient to you. But if we're both brothers in the Lord, there is no I'm beneath you and you're above me. There is no hierarchy. Like none of that exists. So what are you talking about? The manner of a servant. You're a servant. I'm a servant. You're a minister. I'm a minister. The word minister means to serve. We're both servants in the kingdom. So what are you talking about? The manner of a servant? Could it be just because you got your feelings hurt? Well, if that's the case, Paul, that's on you. Again, I don't know, but if that's the case, that's on you, sir.
Talk to me like a normal person, man. You're not on the podium, right? This is not a sermon. Just talk to me dude to dude, right? This is literally this. I'm not joking. This is what happened. So he says, sit down, brother, and let's have a conversation. But you're going to talk to me man to man. And like, that's what I did in there. That's what you build this as. Right? So we're sitting down.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking. And at the time, right, I know they meant Orthodoxy, but I knew about Catholicism. I was reading all this Catholic stuff. And so I was like, look, Paul, I'm not trying to cause you problems. I was like, I really am struggling with the origins of Protestantism, sola scriptura, sola fide. I've been reading these church fathers. And I said, I'm starting to realize that, like, how do we have sola scriptura without tradition? How do we deal with all these church fathers who believed in the real presence, who believed in baptism and regeneration, who talked about saints, talked about relics? He says, brother, I'm going to stop you right there.
Now, real quick, whatever your views on all that stuff is fine, but those are decent in and of itself questions to ask. So my point is, what he's wrestling with is not like oh my gosh, this guy is so like wrong for asking these questions. No, those questions he's asking are legit. And if he's wrestling with it, that's good because he's trying to get an understanding. So there's nothing wrong with that question. Where you fall as far as your answer, that's between you and God and your denomination, your church, whatever. I'm not going to get into that here. But my point is, it's a good question. It's a good question.
I'm going to stop you, Jay, because I've come to a decision after a lot of prayer. He's always telling you how much he prays. He loves to talk about how he goes, because I go into my prayer corner. I'm going to tell you what I've come to, Jay. You're not going to like it. You're not going to like it one bit. It's a blackout, Jay. It's a blackout. What's a blackout? The church was a blackout. And I've prayed about it. And I've come to the Anabaptist conclusion, Jay. The Anabaptists were correct. The church.
By the way, that's what I've come up with too. The Anabaptists were correct in a lot of stuff. And they were basically being persecuted for no good reason. They got some stuff that was right, which means by default, the reformers were wrong. But anyway, that doesn't mean the reformers got everything wrong either. Again, doctrinally, they got some good stuff too. So in fairness, but yeah, they were persecuting on some stuff and stuff that they got right. So I agree with Paul Washer on that. So Paul, what is Paul Washer? What does that now mean for you in your G3 ministries? Because again, every time they have a conference, you're one of the people that they invite if they can get you. You're sitting right next to John MacArthur. You're back in the day, you used to sit right next to Steve Lawson, before his fallout. You used to sit right next to Vodi Bakum. You used to sit right next to, gosh, I know his face. Yeah, I cannot remember. Anyway, but Josh Boyce used to be there. He used to be a moderator of this thing before Josh Boyce got in trouble, and he had to resign for the stuff that he did. So there was all kinds of stuff. Justin Peters, that's his name, Justin Peters. His face was there. Yeah, you're sitting right next to Justin Peters. They had the big panel on the stage, and you were on the stage with them. So now you have an Anabaptist position, and you're saying the church was in a black hole, and the Anabaptists were right. So what does that now mean for your G3 ministry buddies? Again, if you want to leave them, come on over, brother. There's plenty of room. Okay? Because I'm not reformed, and I'm not saying you have to leave, because if you want to be reformed and stay reformed, do what you want to do. But I am curious, if this is what you really said, then where now are you? And I would personally like to have a conversation with you, and not as a rebuke. And you don't got to come on my channel, even though personally I would love it, and my audience would love it too. But just talk to me on the phone, and we can have a man-to-man brother conversation like he's talking about. And I would like to know, just out of curiosity, but just also in your journey, your walk. Because again, I'm a man who had to leave my church. I'm a man who had to leave my denomination. I'm a man who literally gave up everything to do what I'm doing now, because I came up against my hierarchy. I came against the prosperity gospel. I came against my network. So I know what it means to leave your denomination, but not only leave your denomination, be like the black sheep of the family, and they ostracize you because you're so different from what they used to be. So I know what it means to be ostracized from your clique or your clan or your denomination or your church or whatever. I know what it means to give all that up. So here's my invitation to you, Paul. And again, josephahode@hotmail.com. Just email me, man. And if you know somebody that can get a hold of Paul Washer, please have him email me. And I'd love just to talk to him on the phone. I don't have to publicize this, nothing, just between me and him. And we can just talk, because this is fascinating to me. This is really interesting to me. So if you know Paul, whatever, let me know, man. I would love just to talk to him. I think this would be a really good conversation. And it can stay between me and him. It doesn't have to be known. But I'd like to know. But I also would like to know, just personally, is he? That's why the title of this video is he wrestling with his denomination? Meaning, does he have some things in himself that if he really says what he truly believes, he knows he'll lose something. It'll cost him something. He'll get kicked out of the G3 ministries, if you will. Paul Washer, are you wrestling with that? And I'll just encourage you, sir, if you are wrestling with that, please don't wrestle with it anymore. Do what God's telling you to do and go. Don't wrestle with that anymore. Don't worry about what it's going to cost you, because you need to go with God, sir, and do what the Holy Spirit is telling you to do. Okay, but let's just finish this up. I'm winding a little bit, and I'm going to finish it up.
You're not going to like it one bit. It's a blackout, Jay. It's a blackout.
Personally, what does that mean? It's a blackout. Does that mean like the church was like not hearing from God? They weren't getting their Bible right? Like, what does it mean they were blackout? Like there was just a black hole and everybody was sucked in it and nothing, there was no God was in it type of thing? I mean, what do you mean by blackout?
What's a blackout?
The church was a blackout. And I've prayed about it. And I've come to the Anabaptist conclusion, Jay. The Anabaptists were correct. The church was in blackout.
I was like, whoa. I was like, so, like, you went the opposite way. Like, I thought I was going to convince you to move towards liturgical thinking and infant baptism. No, you went the opposite way, right? He went into full on blackout Anabaptist mode, right? And
I say to that, come on in, because there's plenty of room. So let me go ahead and just stop there. Yeah, and if that's the case, Paul Washer, come on in, brother, because there's plenty of room. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about that one, and not in a negative, rebuking way. That again, I'm curious. I'm fascinated by that one, Because again, if you study the history, the Anabaptists were persecuted by the Reformers, and the Reformers were wrong. In my opinion, the Reformers were wrong for that because the Anabaptists got some things right. So, and again, the Reformers got some things right too, but their persecution of the Anabaptists was wrong. And I would love to have a conversation with Paul Washer on that. And because of what you just heard, is he wrestling with Reformed theology? Is he wrestling with G3 Ministries and the people that he has connections with and such? And again, I don't consider Paul Washer in the same camp of like a John MacArthur and all that. But when they have these conferences together, they do conferences together and they share the stage. So I'm wondering, what does Paul Washer think about all that? What does he think about G3 Ministries now that they've had these two scandals with Josh Boyce and Steve Lawson and all that? And again, I don't know Paul Washer's full denominational theology. So please don't at me. He's like, well, he's not Reformed. I don't know. But I know he shares the stage with a lot of them guys, or at least he has in the past. Okay, so I'm curious now. And again, because he said in 2004, 2005 that he was Anabaptist now, or at least that's what he said in 2004, 2005. So what is he now, and where is he now as far as on his journey? Paul Washer, I mean. Boy, this is fascinating to me. Paul, josephahota@hotmail.com. Please email me, brother. I would love to talk to you about this because again, I had to give up everything to get where I'm at now. So I'd love to talk to you about this. This is interesting to me. Anyway, if you like that, like, share, subscribe. You know the deal. And know that God loves you, and I do too. Amen. So until next time, God bless everybody.